We did it not to just fire, but it was we definitely had it. We shot a HIMARS and we watched it on film. The guys were like clearly setting up an IED. They were digging and they dropped it, and the thing must have missed him by 10 feet. But he wobbled away like just nothing happened. So it was Major Getz, our weapons company commander, called a repeat on a HIMARS, and we sure enough shot a second one.
So that was my very first HIMARS call for fire. I was in the COC in Marja, and I was we'd been there for like a month or something like that.
Yep.
And the way it went down was I'm sitting there doing something on my computer, and someone goes, "Hey, I think we have an IED in place there." And I'm like, "What?" And I like look up at the screen, and you see the three guys. There were three guys digging, and I'm like, "Oh shit!" And they're like, "Kramer, can you do a call for fire?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And I like get back on my computer, and for those that don't know, the HIMARS is like it's a division asset. It's like a larger, it can shoot pretty far. So we were doing all our call for fire over chat. It's called Merc Chat. We were doing it via that. Well, when he goes, "Hey Kramer, can we do a call for fire?" I'm like, "Yeah, let's do it." Chat went down. All the data services went down. And I was like, "Oh fuck." But I had this netted iridium radio that I would keep batteries in and do a radio check once with Leatherneck every couple hours and once with Dwyer every couple hours with the battery, because the battery was at Leatherneck and the approval authority was at Dwyer. And once the data went down, I was just like, grab the fucking what was it called, netted iridium, and I'm like, this is me, adjust fire or fire for effect, grid 1 2 3 4 5 6, HIMARS, just kind of went through it all. And I'm like, holy shit, I'm doing this via voice. And I call it over to the HIMARS battery, and then I call over to the approval authority, and then I got approval, and we shot. And I remember like the time of flight was like a minute, and I'm just like, oh man, because it's my first time. This is for real now. Heart's pounding. I turn around, and everybody that's that's on the staff had come into the command center to watch this strike, and I'm like, holy shit, like I'm just sitting there shaking, and that first round hits and whites out the screen, and we're like, fuck yeah, dude, we got him. And then you see like one dude kind of stumbling away and stumbling off, and they're like, he stumbled away, and then he came back and he tried to pick up one of the bodies and throw it on his shoulder, and he like fell down and shit. And they're like, Kramer, can you do a repeat? And I'm like, yeah, repeat target. I got on the radio. I'm like, repeat target number, whatever. And they're like, it's approved. We're approved. Dwyer approved it. And then I got shot target number. Merc Chat had come up. So I got shot target number, blah, 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 on my chat window. And at the exact same time, Dwyer came back and was like, check fire, target number, blah, blah, blah. Because the dude had started moving away from the impact spot.
Yeah.
And, the battery was like, hey, rocket's in the air, like once it's gone, it's gone. So we thought it was going to miss, and we were just watching it, and then boom, and that dude was gone. And I felt good about it because they came that night or later the day. Excuse me, I keep hiccuping. I had a good burrito before we started. Later that day or that next day, they told us that one of the dudes we had killed was an IED expert that they had just brought in from Pakistan, and he was literally on his first time sitting down with guys to show him how to place an IED. That was his first, little group of dudes he was teaching how to do it. So I was like, fuck that dude. I didn't feel bad about it at all. And I think we may have tied him to when Charlie, I want to say it was Charlie 1-6. I want to say it was Charlie 1-6. One of their platoon commanders or something like that hit an IED early on in the deployment and got really fucked up. And he actually got medevaced out of country. So I think he was tied to that IED as well. So, yeah, man, that was crazy stuff. It was that was call for fire for real. When I went to Afghanistan, I was kind of butthurt because I was a lap mover, and when you're a sergeant 0861, it's a real toss-up. A lot of times, like, you want to go do the scout stuff. Everybody wants to do the call for fire, the, be on patrol and stuff like that. Yep. And they're like, hey, man, you're a sergeant, and you're not an idiot, and we need fires chiefs. So, normally we'd send you out as a scout, even as a sergeant, because it's your first deployment as a forward observer, but we need a fires chief, and they sent me as a fires chief. And I was like, man, this sucks, because all the guys are going to get to do all the cool stuff, but I ended up getting to do all the call for fire. None of those dudes even got to. It was just kind of not as busy as we thought it'd be, and it was a lot easier to control most of the fire support assets from the COC than down from on the ground. Yeah, man, you guys were living it up though. I mean, it was just, that was legit like a shitty spot to be. And
Yeah, it was interesting times for sure.
yeah, what was your thoughts? You had worked with the Iraqi army prior to that. What was your thoughts of the Afghan army compared to the Iraqi army?
In my opinion, the Afghan army way more aggressive, way more willing to fight. That was my biggest takeaway from them. Those guys, if we got a single shot at our patrol base, they were going all in on that to find out what's going on. They were way more aggressive in regards. Yeah.
Do you think they were aggressive or they just didn't care?
They had probably a little mix of both, but yeah, they were still about it. Like they weren't scared, they weren't timid. They didn't come up with many excuses as to why they weren't doing anything. That's the biggest thing I saw. They said they were ready to fight. They wanted to fight. It
was good when I was an advisor in 2013 to see Afghans that wanted to fight for their country and like make it a better place. Like they saw, they're like, it doesn't have to be this way. Like if we could get the Taliban out of here, we could get Kajaki Dam up and running finally, and people would have, consistent power. We could actually like move into the future a little bit. Like there were guys that realized that. And it sucks for those guys because there were a lot of guys that were just pieces of shit that were just there to collect, some money. They didn't care who was fighting, who won, or whatever. But aggressive, yes. Sometimes ridiculous. They would. I remember we went to this other patrol base in Afghanistan on my advisor tour, and they were taking contact. They had gotten into a pretty big firefight. One of the soldiers had stepped on an IED and blew his foot off. And we're like, rolling up into all this like craziness. And once we got there, it kind of quickly died down. And we're just like hanging out there talking to the Afghans, kind of waiting for whatever was going to be coming next. And this one Afghan dude was just kind of sitting there leaning against his shit, leaning against his gear. And he's kind of like eyeballing us. And he gets up and he's just like, never looks away from us, just looks right at us, loads a 203 and goes boop and just launches it over the wall of the patrol base. Not even looking, just staring right at us like dook, and just sits back down. And I'm like, what the fuck was that? Like, where did that just go? We would try to explain, like, dude, you doing that makes those people outside the wall fucking hate you. That could have landed on anyone's compound.
Yep. Yeah, we were, this was probably mid to end of our deployment. We were at Kapiazi at the time. And we had taken some contact inside of the patrol base. But again, same thing. As soon as they started shooting at us, all four corners of the base started opening up in all four directions. So there was no way to tell. So I hopped out of the COC and I ran up to the closest patrol base tower, guard tower there to see what's going on. There's a couple of Afghanis up there. And I get up there and I'm trying to talk to them about where is this coming from so I can kind of give the COC a better direction. And right as we're up there, it was at least two, but probably more rounds hit the freaking plexiglass right in front of our face.
Oh, fuck.
So we're like, all right, well, we know it's coming from that direction. So I started trying to direct them all in that direction and go down to the COC and kind of give them an ad direct so they can kind of figure out a little bit of what's going on in regards to that. But yeah, it was just funny because it was so hard to tell whenever we took contact where it was coming from because they just shot in all directions.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, that'll wake you up, though, having a round land right in front of your face like that.
Yep.
Did you take a picture of that?
I probably have it somewhere, yeah.
Yeah, you have to. If you can find it, you should send that to me. I'll post it up.
See if
I think that'd be
it.
cool. Yeah, my problem, one of my biggest issues is I try to get the point across to the Afghans. I'm like, hey man, I'm the Team JTAC and I want to bring in fire support assets, but I can't call in any kind of explosive stuff if I don't know where you're at. Like I have to know where you're at compared to where the enemy's at, so I can make sure that I'm not actually going to kill one of you guys.
Yeah.
And I remember we gave them a bunch of smoke grenades for some mission, and we're like, hey, when we tell you, pop the smoke so we can identify your location. We'll tell you, whatever group we need to do it, we'll tell you. Yeah. And they got into this big-ass firefight. The photo that's on my Jay Kramer graphics page, the picture of me behind the long-range thermal viewer, was that incident. And I'm basically watching a battle unfold in front of me. I got Taliban on one side and Afghans on the other side. Just mortars are flying, RPGs are flying. And they got into the thick of it and started fighting, closer up. And we're like, hey, we need you to pop smoke so we could tell where the front of the line is. And everybody just started popping smoke. Smoke popping all over the battlefield. I'm like, fuck. That didn't help. I was trying to explain because I had the Afghan commanders with me. I'm like, dude, I need to know where your dudes are. We can't. You're telling me they had a building full of people that they were like, these are enemy. Turned out to be A. But I'm like, dude, that's what I'm talking about. I was like, that's the issue. You're telling me that this is an enemy position, and it turns out it's your guys.